Yo, it's Elut. Welcome back to the channel. And today we're talking Branded Lost. So I've talked about this card multiple times in various videos. And I think I'm just going to talk about it generally here, just in case someone stumbles upon this that is new to the deck and just needs to learn all of the stuff. So I will go over basic things that I have talked about before with this card. But the main reason I'm making this video here is because I was made aware of a ruling that I did not know, and I want to rectify that for one thing, and I also don't see too many people talk about it, and I don't think it's something that you should necessarily assume that everybody knows. And I don't know, I've really kind of had my mind blown a little bit, and I was like, oh shit, more people should mention this sort of thing. But anyway, we'll go over the basic stuff first. So the most basic effect with this is if you fusion summon a monster, just period, if you fusion summon something, you can activate the effect on field and search a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz. That can be Fallen of Albaz, that can be Cartesia, Quem, Shrouded Dragon, Mercurier, even Springen's Kit if you're playing Kit, whatever. If it mentions Fallen of Albaz and is a monster, after you have fusion summoned, period, you can search it from the deck to your hand. Okay, duh. That's pretty simple. I've talked more in depth about that in other videos, so I won't go too crazy on that fact, okay? However, the thing I really wanted to touch on here is the very first sentence of the card, which is the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned this way. Okay. So the more obvious sort of applications of this first effect are when you activate your in-engine cards as Chain Link 1. And the reason that matters is because the card says also your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned this way, not if a monster is fusion summoned this way, which means if you don't happen to know that it can miss timing. So the sort of easy way to understand this is if Branded Lost is up on your field and you, on your turn, activate Branded Fusion as Chain Link 1, or Branded in White as Chain Link 1, or even Cartesia or Branded in Red or whatever as Chain Link 1, and it resolves successfully, the chain link after that, since the last thing that happened in the chain link 1, was the fusion summon of a monster, the next chain after that, your opponent cannot respond with anything, whether that be quick effects, trigger effects, anything. So, if Branded Lost is up on the field, you activate Branded Fusion as Chain Link 1, and it resolves successfully. They don't have Ash or whatever. You go into Albion. Here, we'll go Chain Link 1 Albion to fuse. Chain Link 2 will be Branded Lost because we did Fusion Summon, and this will search us a card to our hand. Here, right here, Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2, our opponent cannot respond because Chain Link 1 was Branded Fusion. The last thing that happened was the Fusion Summon of a monster. So when, on the card, when we Fusion Summoned the monster, our opponent cannot respond. And the reason we make Albion Chain Link 1 here is because usually what will happen is we'll search with Branded Lost as Chain Link 2, Chain Link 1 Albion will resolve, and we will go into Lubellion. And here, again, Chain Link 1 previously was Albion, and he fusion summoned. So the last thing to happen in the chain was the fusion summon of a monster. So here we'll go Chain Link 1 Lubellion. They cannot respond to Lubellion. And then Lubellion will resolve, shuffle himself back, make Mirror Jade. And then here as well, on the summon of Mirror Jade, in the summon window of Mirror Jade, our opponent also cannot respond because the last thing that happened was Lubellion fusion summoning. So there's a window right here where you actually can fire off the Mirror Jade Banish, and your opponent can't respond to that either. That can absolutely come up, so keep that in mind. The thing that I wanted to talk about specifically for today's video is with Fusion Duplication and Thrust. Thrust is usually played with Fusion Duplication. I don't see anybody just playing Fusion Duplication by itself. That'd be kind of weird. So I think this is important for two reasons. One, just to like inform, just so people know, because as I said earlier, I didn't know this until recently, and I think it's important. But I also think it's extra important right now because more and more people are actually playing Thrust and Duplication rather than just playing Nadir Servant or Cross-Out Designator. This has definitely been like the favored sort of tech option for Branded recently. So if you don't happen to know, what people have been doing is they play Branded Fusion, and if it gets ashed and they have Thrust in hand, what they do is they activate Thrust and they set Duplication in the back row. And that will mean that Branded Fusion is in the graveyard. So on the opponent's turn, we can Fusion Duplication, target Branded Fusion in the graveyard. This will banish Branded Fusion and copy its effect. So we get to Branded Fuse on our opponent's turn. That's like the purpose of it, right? And when we do that, let's say we do that, right? And we go into Albion, right? We can go Chainlink 1 Albion to fuse. We can go Chainlink 2 Branded Lost to search, because we did Fusion Summon. If a monster is Fusion Summoned, you can search. But the thing that's really important here is your opponent can respond here, even if Fusion Duplication was Chainlink 1. And this might seem weird if you're not super experienced with like how specific Yu-Gi-Oh card text can be. So the original ruling for this actually comes from a different set of cards, which is Magical Meltdown and Predaplant Verte Anaconda. Anaconda is banned in the TCG, so you don't have to worry about that. But you can think of Anaconda as Fusion Duplication, and you can think of Magical Meltdown as Branded Lost. In simple terms, they apply the same way based on this particular ruling. And the reason your opponent can respond here after Fusion Duplication has resolved is for one reason, and that reason is the way Branded Lost has been worded. So if we read the first sentence again, like you can just take that right now, if that's all you needed, and you're just like, oh, okay, so if I Fusion Dupe, even if it's Chainlink 1 and I have Lost up, my opponent can respond. The thing to note is, if Albion does resolve after that as Chainlink 1 and makes Lubellion or whatever, then your opponent cannot respond to whatever Lubellion is doing. But on the summon of Albion through Fusion Duplication, your opponent can respond, which is the important part here. But if you want to get like real deep into like the actual wording of the card, then this section of the video is for you. So if we read the first sentence again, the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. So that means while Lost is up and someone ashes your Branded Fusion will die. Ash Blossom negates the effect of Branded Fusion, not the activation. The activation is protected. Okay, but the second part of that sentence, also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned this way. This way, I think, is the reason it is ruled in this way, because I think if this card was worded as also your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned, and it just stopped there, I think I would wager, I'm not saying for sure, I'm an idiot, but I would wager that if it didn't have the two words this way at the end of that first sentence, Fusion Duplication resolving as Chainlink 1 into Albion would keep your opponent from responding. I don't think that, even in that case, like, Fusion Duplication, the activation can be negated under Branded Lost. This is not a fusion, quote-unquote, spell or trap card explicitly, because nothing on Fusion Duplication actually says that it is causing a fusion summon. And the reason it doesn't say that is not an oversight, if you think about it, because, yes, you can target the Branded Fusion, which is a fusion spell. Obviously, that will fusion summon. You can target something like Super Poly. Obviously, that will fusion summon. But you can also target things like Fusion Deployment, which do not fusion summon. So I don't think that's an oversight like with Duplication. I think that's intentional. But the this way at the end of the first sentence of Branded Lost means also your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned by cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster. So basically what I'm saying to you is if you take this way and just replace it with the first part of the effect, it makes a lot more sense. Because even if duplication is chain link 1 and we successfully copy Branded Fusion and go into Albion, this is not a card that includes an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster. That is the result of fusion duplication. That is what it ends up doing when we target Branded Fusion, but it's not what the card says that it's going to do. It does not say, hey, we are fusion summoning a monster. So in that way, your opponent can respond afterward, and they can negate the activation of duplication, even if Branded Lost is on the field when you activate it. So yeah, that's pretty important to know. As I said earlier, if you activate Fusion Dupe, go into Albion, and they let Albion resolve, and then it goes into Lubellion, and Albion was Chain Link 1, they cannot respond after that, but they can respond to the initial summon of Albion through Fusion Duplication if Branded Lost is on the board. So yeah, I think that's important to know, obviously for the Branded players, as well as people playing against Branded. Don't cheat and don't get cheated. So yeah, just in case you didn't know that sort of thing, because I didn't know that sort of thing. I'll fully admit that, and I wanted to rectify that here in this video. So apologize for that. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, then that's also good too, because you already knew this. So yeah, thanks, peace out, take care.